My purpose is to become the best version of myself that I can be, and then give that person to the world. I had a coach, he says, become the man that you admire and give that man to the world. Well, I don't admire the man who sleeps in. I don't admire the man who doesn't work out. I don't admire the man who takes the easy route. I don't admire my old self who was drinking all the time or whatever. You know, I don't admire those things, so I don't want to embody those things and then show up in the world that way, right? I admire the guy who gets up early, who does things that are difficult, who takes extreme ownership, who, you know what I mean? Those are the characteristics that I admire, because I think those are what move things forward in a positive way. It's the first time I've ever been a guest. It feels weird.
Why?
Are we recording?
Maybe.
Okay. I don't know, because like even just saying like, okay, introduce yourself. I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm Joe. You know, like I've never really done that before.
It's like so. Joe the guy.
Just the guy. Joe the guy. Joe the trainer guy. I don't know. I guess I don't have a spiel. I don't have like a 30-second elevator pitch of like who I am.
Tell me about your background. Tell me about where you grew up.
Grew up here, Minneapolis. Graduated from Wayzata back in the day. Went to the U after 1 year at ASU. And then right before I graduated college officially, before I finished all my classes, I had a foreign language requirement left, but I left for the military.
Okay.
Just like a little bit after 9/11, kind of sparked it all up. Are we good here? What do we got going on?
Keep talking.
Okay. Yeah, so then I was in Virginia Beach for 5 years in the military, which was awesome and awful. A little bit of both, but overall
What was
awesome.
awesome and awful about it?
The people were awesome. I mean, it's just like military lifestyle is not super great, not super glamorous, but it was not that bad. Honestly, I'm glad I did it. You know, for sure. I would do it over again in a heartbeat.
How long was that period of time?
5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, 5 years. Again, met some great people that I still keep in touch with. It's crazy like how much you get to know somebody in a really short period of time looking back. During, it felt so long. It's like, how much time do you have left? It's like being in prison, like how much time left on your sentence kind of a thing.
Oof.
Then it's over. Then after that, moved home for a year, got into grad school out in California. And at the time, they had changed the GI Bill. So they were going to pay for housing based on your zip code. And prior to me getting out, I wanted to be stationed in California. I mean, I ultimately wanted to be there no matter what. Ended up out east, but that's another part of the story. And anyhow, so when they revamped the GI Bill and said they pay for housing, I'm like, well, I could have them pay for housing here in Minnesota, which would be fine, or California, which is where I wanted to be, which would be better. So I ended up out there for about 8 years, and then was training out there, personal training at an awesome spot called Beach Fitness in Seal Beach. Do you know where Seal Beach is?
No.
So it's like right on the Orange County, LA County border. So it's like there's Huntington Beach, Sunset, Seal Beach, both really small, and then Long Beach. So it's kind of sandwiched between these really big cities, right? Excuse me. So that was awesome. Did that for, I was there for like a few years, and then helped open up another location, which was great. Ultimately sold that to some other trainers from that same gym. Was there for a couple more years, and then moved back right before COVID, which was kind of crazy.
What did you go to graduate school for?
Business. Business, yeah.
Okay.
So, and then the idea being like using that to help small business, which was the gym. And there was really cool owners there, and then a business consultant there who is no longer with us anymore, but he was an awesome guy. Learned a lot from him. Learned a lot about what to do, what not to do with like the small business kind of gym scene, which is really tough. And then just felt the calling to move back June 2019, which was kind of weird. It was one of those things where like, it was very similar to when I left for the military. I could tell you a bunch of reasons why I did it, but ultimately like, I just felt compelled to do it. And I was scared to do it. Did it anyway. Ended up being awesome. Same thing when I moved home. Don't know why I was doing it. Really didn't want to leave California, but felt compelled to come back. And then the world shut down. COVID got weird. Got everything weird. And then my dad ended up getting sick, terminally ill with esophageal cancer. So I was able to be home for that. So it was actually really a blessing in disguise kind of a thing. And here we are now. Now I'm a trainer at Lifetime in Edina.
There's so much we could talk about. And we will talk about at least 45 minutes worth of things.
Okay. Cool. We'll pack it in.
What does feeling compelled feel like to you?
Scary.
Like how? Like, do you feel it like in your gut? Like, what is? Do you have a thought that's just incessant? Like, what is? What is being compelled?
It's like being pulled, like not like against will, not kicking and screaming, but like, I don't know, I got to do this. Like there's nothing.
Like I have to. There's no option.
Like, there's just, this is happening. Whether I want to, my ego wants to interject, or I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. It's like, no, this is happening. This is part of my path. I can't explain it. You could say like, oh, it's God's calling, it's source, it's this, it's that. I don't know where it came from or why, but it just ultimately was like, you're doing this. Like if you had asked me when I was growing up if I would ever join the military, like, no, absolutely not. That'd be ridiculous. And then something happens, things change, and I'm being pulled in this totally weird direction that I never thought I would be in, which ended up being a blessing. Right?
Yeah.
So I think it's, what makes it a calling is that I can't explain it. I don't know. And I don't want to be dramatic about it. It was just like this thing, like, I got nothing.
It was just really clear to you, and nothing else was clear.
Yeah. I mean, the day I left the night before I left for boot camp, I was crying. Like, what am I doing? Like, I literally don't know. I'm scared. There's a lot of unknown here, but here we go, kind of a thing.
Yeah. I asked because I feel like if I think part of my hope with this podcast and with things in general is to help people figure out how to uncover their path, their truth, their calling, their whatever it is. And so when I hear somebody say, I don't know, I just had to do it, I like to ask, well, how did you know? Because I think a lot of people don't know how they know, or they don't know what they should listen for, look for, or when they're like, that's a crazy thought, I'm just not going to do it. And they just deny the knowing. So thank you for going down that path with me.
Well, yeah. And I think, I don't know why I'm like this, but it's like, then I have to go do it. Do you know what I mean? It's not like, I'm not really willing to just totally bury it, at least not forever, because it will like fester. It'll create resentment or bitterness or who knows what. Like if you don't just go for it, sometimes you just gotta have faith, and that it'll work out. Or like I was really compelled to go to California, and none of that went according to plan. Right? So like there's like a lot of ego check, you know what I mean? A lot of breakthroughs where you're like, man, I don't control nearly as much as I think, so I need to listen to this powerful other force, whatever that is, no matter what. Whether I like it or not, I'm going to go for it. And it could be very humbling. It could be very amazing in ways I didn't know. You got to be willing to almost be in awe of whatever happens. Like I said, I met incredible people. I had an incredible experience. I think I had a really good career for 5 years in the Navy relative to what I thought going in. But I wouldn't have known that. I wouldn't have learned things about myself if I'd been like, no, I'm just going to keep.
I was just going to say, I feel like you learn how to learn about yourself, about your ego, about how lessons show up. Like all of that is a huge part of the process of the becoming. Yeah. Okay. So out of all the things you could have done, why fitness? Like why that?
Well, it started in the Navy. So at the time, this was like 04 to 09, and like partway through, they were actually downsizing the military, or the Navy in particular, which is why it was so hard to get the billet that I wanted when it was time to rotate from sea duty to shore duty. But what was happening is if people were failing their PRT, the physical readiness test, too many times, they would get kicked out. Because it was like kind of low-hanging fruit to like get rid of people and kind of thin the herd, right? And I was doing really well with those, and so they were taking people like me, guys, girls who were doing really well, and saying, hey, do you want to help these people who are struggling? Do you want to kind of basically be a trainer, right? And I'm like, yeah, sure, that'd be cool. Wasn't my main job, but at the time, that's also when I was like getting into CrossFit, and that was kind of a big deal where I was, like in Virginia Beach. I'm like, yeah, this would be awesome. Like I'm learning a lot about myself as I'm doing it. I went to this place called CrossFit Virginia Beach. It was like at the same time, like maybe I can use some of these things to help these people, which it worked, right? I mean, these are people who were 15, 16, 18 years in, who could potentially get kicked out before they hit the 20-year mark, which is kind of that like golden number to get your full retirement, all these different things. So I'm like, yeah, this would be great. And then ended up being something that I'm like, this is awesome. Got certified and all that. And then just kind of like kept going down that road. It was just kind of I don't know, very aligned, I guess, with kind of what I was interested in. And then it really helped me like learn more about people, which ultimately at the end of the day is like the most fascinating thing to me. Like, I think I've told you this before, but I have this selfish belief that everyone's here to teach me something. Like I can learn something from everyone. And if I can like give back in the process, then it's like a fair trade. And I feel like training and coaching is very much like that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I get to see people grow, see people transform, see people go through things that they maybe didn't think that they could. Right?
Yeah. I'm down with that.
Yeah, which is dope. Yeah. So it was like a really kind of a seamless thing, and like I'm into it. myself. So if I can help other people do it too, great.
One of the things you told me, well, let's just start with your tattoo. Tell us about your tattoo.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to go online if you want to see the tattoo.
So the 3 bands represents transformation.
Yes.
And so what I mean by that is like, and part of this, I keep bringing these things back to the military because it was such like a pivotal point for me personally, because the whole concept is like, a bunch of people get off the bus as civilians. Some have long hair, some have short hair, some are wearing this or that, or they come from all these different backgrounds. Some are from Dallas, some are from small towns in Texas. Arkansas, they're all over the world, right? And then you come in and then they completely strip you down from like kind of your civilian identity and they build you back up to be in the Navy or the Marines or whatever, because you have to kind of, conform to this whole other lifestyle so you can contribute, right? So it's a huge transformational process. One that they don't do on the way out, unfortunately, and that's a kind of a topic for another day, is like, boot camp's 9 to 12 weeks, but to get into the military, but to get out, it's like 2 days. So they don't like do the opposite on the way back. They don't like transform you back.
I could do a civilian.
Yeah. But anyway, that's a different topic. So what this represents for me is like a lot of people, you see it online, like you see these before and afters, and people think that transformation is very physical, right? So they see a physical transformation. Somebody went from 30 pounds overweight to not 30 pounds overweight. They went from fat to fit and all this stuff. But that's like the smallest part. So when it comes to this tattoo, this first band actually represents the physical part of a transformation, right? It's actually the smallest part. And then what that means is that as you're starting the physical stuff, you're starting to realize it's a lot more mental. And that's what the second part is. So this physical part rolls up into the second one, which makes it twice as big, right? And we're ascending up through this transformational process. Then through that process, you realize it's not so much about like even just the physical and the mental, it's really a spiritual component, right? So it's like the being part. And then so both of those combined actually get bigger in the spiritual sense of it. And that's why it keeps elevating up, is because it's not about what you're getting. It's really not even about what you're doing, but it's about who you're being or who you're becoming in that process, right? And I think that, we get the attention grabber is like the result. But the reality is that it's a couple steps prior to that of like the being. Like who are you being while you're doing what you're doing to get who you ultimately have?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So, but we get pitched it a way different way growing up. It's like, oh, well, I want to be a millionaire, so once I get $1 million, I'll do what they do and then I'll become one. It's like, no, you have to become one on the way while you're doing these things that create this result, which is ultimately, how do you give this value, or how do you contribute to people on a larger scale? And you have to become somebody different. It can't be about you, right? So that transformational process, it starts off, like I said, physical, then you realize it's more mental, and then as you're doing that, you realize it's neither of those, and it's like you're becoming this whole other human being.
It's so fascinating to me that you're meeting people at the gateway, and your passion is like what's way beyond that, or at least that's what I'm hearing you say. Yeah. Do you find yourself coaching people on the second and third aspects, or are you really like, when you work with somebody in a physical environment, are you focused primarily on like, let's get you fit? And then do you just trust that as they begin that process, it's going to open the door for the other two?
Well, I just know that it will.
Yeah.
I know that it will. But at the same time, it's what I thought at first is that I have to like help people do it, but really it's like I have to support them in it. And the hardest part is like, some people don't want to go there.
Go where?
Go to that place where you have to become somebody different, right? To get the result.
Yep.
They just don't. Like, it's scary. It's the same with like that calling thing. It's like somebody on the outside, or maybe they're hearing this and like, wow, that's like really bold of you to do this, that, and the other. Maybe they think that. I don't think that, but maybe they do. And like, I could never do that. Well, there's a lot of people who are like, I can never become that person that I think that I want to be, or that I'm being called to be. Right? Like my conscience is telling me I want to. So I put out a lot of stuff directed towards men. And one of those things is like, every guy, I believe, wants to be rich, ripped, and respected. But to become the person who's rich, ripped, and respected, you've got to do the work to get in shape. You got to do the work to make the money, and you got to be a good leader and an example for people. Well, to be that is a lot. It's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of pressure. It takes a lot of change, a lot of willingness to be humble in that process. It takes time. Like, all those things aren't. Not everybody wants to go through that, and that's no fault of their own. Like, it's difficult. You know, so when somebody says that, okay, they're going to hire me, I'm going to be their trainer, it starts physical. So at a minimum, at least I can teach them the movements, So they have that skill set. It's very rare, like, that people really start to dig in. And, you know, I can think of only of the hundreds of people that I've worked with, there's probably only a few that really like went all the way up this ladder and became someone totally different. But those people had a really compelling thing pulling them forward, and they were scared. There were tears numerous times with these people. I mean,
what was compelling them?
They wanted more out of their life. They wanted to have this other, they wanted this version inside of them they wanted out into the world. And they were going to do whatever it took to get there, even if they were scared, even if it was painful, even if they had to go to social situations and feel awkward, if they had to, you know what I mean? They were just willing to do what most people aren't to get what they wanted.
How do you think, these are kind of maybe obscure questions, we'll see where they go, but when I meet people that are that attached to a sense of purpose, I'm like, how did they get that attached to a sense of purpose where other people aren't? Like, maybe that's too, I'm assuming something happened in their life, or they had a fear of a health failure, or like something that was like, no, life is too short, I can't live it this other way or something. But I don't know.
I think a lot of it can be kind of dark. I think it's a lot of it is willing to be, you know, like I was just listening to this audiobook, Relentless by Tim Grover, and he talks about the dark side. It's like willing to go and own that part. That's like, I have to be selfish right now to go live this life that I'm creating for myself, no matter what. And that takes an incredible amount of, I mean, it's so rare, right? Because it's so difficult. The social pressure, the rejection, the what if it doesn't work, the fear, the failure, all these things can be like, well, the smart move, the logical move, play it safe, right?
I feel like I would have said that probably 5-6 years ago, maybe. But I think the thing for me is that I got a taste of like the fear of staying stagnant.
What was that though? What was the taste of?
Oh, well, for me, it was after my dad died, right? And so then it was a huge pivotal moment of like, oh God, life is going to be short. And if it's long, do I really want to live it in fear of what if? Like either, it's so cliche, like choose your heart, but it's like either way, you're going to have to face fear. If I don't pursue health and abundance and all of those things, then I'm living in fear of what's going to happen to my body, and am I going to have money to make it? And like either way, you're faced with difficulties. And then I'm like, well, I might as well choose this one over here and have like the potential for amazing joy and pleasure in life versus this. I think there's challenge either way you go. So you might as well walk through the fire.
Yeah, but I agree. I thank you for sharing that, because like loss can be obviously a pivotal moment for sure. But I think it's also, you know, there's a lot of like, especially in the personal development space, there's a lot of like happy, you know, positive, like of course, like that's important. But some of like the biggest breakthroughs I ever had is I would write out in my journal everything that I regret. What's making me depressed? Why do I have anxiety? Who am I mad at? Where's my bitterness? Like, so when I say facing like the dark stuff, it's saying, what am I afraid of? Write that out, face it. What do I regret? How do I polish that rough edge? How do I keep the character that I want, you know, that I say that I want? How do I become that person? I got to look at everything that's making me who I am now, good and bad. Right. So like people are big on like gratitude journals. Like I'm not really that big on gratitude because I live in a pretty grateful state I just kind of am like that. It's more of like when I snap at the boys or I get mad at work, or you know what I mean? It's like, okay, man, I really wish I wouldn't have done that. I regret that. And being okay going, I regret that. I made a mistake. I don't want to be like that anymore. I did this. I did like, what can I own that's not just the positive stuff? It's like, I got to own all this negative stuff and really examine under a microscope the negative aspect, because there's so much energy in the negativity that if I can use that in a different way, but if I never look at it or I pretend it doesn't exist, then I'm never going to be able to grow. If I'm not willing to say, well, I'm going to regret this if I don't do it, like I got to know that about myself, right? Like, of course, the fun stuff's the fun stuff. Yeah, I want to go on vacation or whatever, do something fun. That's easy and all that. But that's not going to get me where I want to go. That's not going to help me become who I want to become. That's not going to get you where you're trying to go if you're not willing to go, because everything you just said about all these different fears and stagnations, that's all regret.
Yeah.
I'll regret if all these things, that's going to eat you up. So it's like, well, how do I set myself free now? I face it and I go for it anyway, because I'll feel better failing that way than failing this way.
I mean, ultimately taking responsibility. I mean, in a lot of the conversations we've had, I hate to use the word passionate because it's so overused, but you get impassioned speaking about men and how you hope that they would take responsibility for X, Y, Z, you name it. Talk to me about that. Talk to me about like what you see in men and what you want to see more of in more men.
Well, when I'm talking to them, I'm talking to myself.
Yeah.
Like one of the most influential people in my life, and you've probably heard this before by now, but he said, like, every time you're pointing a finger, there's 3 pointing back at you. So a lot of stuff it's like talking to a mirror also. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I see a lot of weakness. I see a lot of like hiding, lying, and like, I've been that guy. So it's not like I'm saying I'm so great, guys, you need to get on my level. Like, it's not like that. It's like, if iron really sharpens iron, then we have to be iron. But if we're sitting around being soft and weak or being pushed around or blaming and complaining and making excuses and being the victim, like if guys are doing that, that's a big fucking problem. Sorry. I don't know.
You can swear.
Can I swear in here? Okay. That's a big problem though. It's a big problem. And it comes from my own life. It comes from, men that I've had in my life, both good and bad as examples, coaches, my dad, like where I saw strength and saw weakness. Again, polishing these rough edges, because I think at the end of the day, it's why is Jocko so popular? Why is David Goggins so popular, right? They're talking about extreme ownership. There's a discipline, there's an ownership piece, there's an accountability, there's a being willing to do these things that suck. I mean, it just is, it's part of our nature, I think, is meant to do that. But what we've also done as a result is made it incredibly convenient, comfortable, safe. Like, life's pretty freaking good. You turn the AC on, you turn the heat on, whatever. Like, it's very convenient. So we have to like instill these difficult things in ourselves. Right? Like, why does Jocko post about waking up at 4 a.m.? Because the alarm clock goes off and you have a choice, right? It's like the Viktor Frankl thing. It's like there's something happens and there's a little bit of space before you respond, and then there's your response. Are you going to react to it? Are you going to respond to it? How are you going to show up in that moment that sucks? If 4 a.m. is the hardest thing you have to do, and you can do that, that's good. That's progress, right? But if you hit the snooze button, you sleep in, you skip a workout, you do these different things, you're creating this downward spiral, and you're going to pull other people down with you. Because I think that as men, if we're supposed to be leaders, we're leading the wrong direction, myself included, right? If I keep doing that and going against what I need to do for me to be the best version that I can be, that's going to start to be a different example and start to pull things down. So the reason I'm so specific towards men is because I am one. Like I said, when I'm talking to them, I'm talking to myself too, right? This is like a reminder to myself, like, dude, get your shit together. Wake up, do difficult things, because it matters, right?
Why does it matter? Like, what's on the other side of that?
I have no idea. It only matters in the sense of like, it's like purpose driven, right? So my goal is to become the man. Like, my purpose is to become the best version of myself that I can be, and then give that person to the world. I had a coach. He says, become the man that you admire and give that man to the world. Well, I don't admire the man who sleeps in. I don't admire the man who doesn't work out. I don't admire the man who takes the easy route. I don't admire my old self who was drinking all the time or whatever. I don't admire those things. So I don't want to embody those things and then show up in the world that way. Right? I admire the guy who gets up early, who does things that are difficult, who takes extreme ownership, who, you know what I mean? Those are the characteristics that I admire, because I think those are what move things forward in a positive way. Right? It's like the weak men create hard times. I want to be a strong man who creates easy times for other people. I want to make people's lives better because of what I'm doing. And if that means that my life is harder, I'm cool with that, because I want to be the kind of man who can handle it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But if I'm not, like, how can I lead these 2 young men in my life? My girlfriend has 2 boys, 11 and 13. How can I be a good example for them if I can't be a good example for myself? And then how can I have them be around other men who are stumbling around drunk? Right? It's like, that's not a good example. But if that's how all the guys are showing up, then that's what these guys are going to think is the example. Do you know what I mean? So I don't even know if that answered your question. I kind of got off on a tangent. No, but that's why I put this stuff out. It's like, what are you controlling? Are these vices controlling you, or are you controlling them? Right? Sure. Okay. You can have a drink, but can you not have one? You know what I mean? It's like, you can skip a workout, but can you go to work? Like,
who's in control? Like,
do you got this, dude?
Yeah.
Like, because I can't trust you if you don't.
Yeah.
If I can't trust you, then it's on me.
Yeah.
And like, I would rather be able to trust you and me than only me. Right. And then also like, hey man, I'm trying to get better too. And if you're not, then I can't spend a lot of time with you. I love you, man. I want the best for you. I want your life to be amazing, but I'm trying to go here. I need someone, if I'm really going to go there, we need, you know what I mean? Like, I need you to come with me so we can go further. I can go quick, but not as far by myself.
Yep.
Right. So I want these guys, because selfishly, I want more.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm going to need other people in my life who want that too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So speaking of more, the last conversation we had, we talked about your next, I'm going to say iteration or level of
iteration.
Okay. You like that?
Big word, yeah.
Can you hang with some big words today?
We'll find out. I might just be a meathead. I don't know if I got this vocabulary thing down.
A trainer meathead, Joe.
That's it.
Yeah, and sort of the level of emotional connection or emotional, we've talked about this word vulnerability. And to give it a little bit of framework for the listeners, I listened to something last week where there was two men and they were talking about sort of this next level that a lot of men are stepping into in the world and in their relationships, which is a level of emotional depth and connection that hasn't been historically required of men. And if you look back centuries, women were the ones that were performing spiritual rituals, and they were connected in the village and community, and they were the nurturers, and that is literally wired into our DNA. It's like in our nervous system, and in a man's nervous system, it's like get in and get out, like hurry up and procreate before the hunter comes in, and hurry up and go kill that thing. And it's very protective and fast moving and not as focused on connection. And that is also literally hardwired into DNAs and epigenetics in men's bodies. And it really hasn't been until the last 50 years or so that, and I'm speaking very generalized here in terms of men and women, but that the masculine has been faced with an opportunity and or a desire to go beyond that and make kind of like you were talking about your tattoos, like what does it mean to go into mental, but then emotional and spiritual connection. And so I think that you are one of few men that I know. There's a handful in my world that are even entertaining that That sounds so negative.
What?
I don't know if that's true. I don't want to generalize that like all men or 95% of men won't have these conversations or explore this, but I guess that's my perception right now.
Sure.
That there are.
But for the sake of conversation, it's probably a good generality to operate from, right? It's a starting point.
Okay, so talk to me about that. Like, where are you at in that part of your journey, or what's kind of your perception on men being connected and in whether it's in a romantic relationship or just in how they show up to the world? You were talking about this guy on Instagram you were following.
Yeah, his name's Kyle. He runs a program called Superhuman Fathers. He's a firefighter. He's married. He's got a bunch of kids, like 5 kids or something like that.
A bunch. He's got a bunch of kids.
Bunch of kids. But like pretty masculine dude, pretty hardcore guy. And he has an ability to get on social media and be incredibly vulnerable and authentic and just like, you're like, damn, it's like, but it's compelling. So I think the tricky part in navigating this aspect of authenticity, honesty, and things like that is how is it showing up? Because there's a lot of guys trying to operate out of that space, especially like in the social media. Because it's a marketing angle too, right? Yeah, it could be a way to grab audience and attention. So how does it show up? So to me, you take this guy that I'm telling you about, this guy Kyle, and you take somebody else who's trying to do something similar, and I can see them very differently. To where this person over here, I'm gonna be like, dude, I'm not buying it. But this guy, I'm like, oh my God, that's real. And I think the authenticity and that maybe the movement towards it, or maybe a return to it. I mean, I don't know, just kind of where we're at right now. It comes from the ability to just tell the truth all the time. And I don't necessarily mean like the radical honesty movement. I just mean like, I think guys are lying to themselves a lot. And then as a result, they end up lying to others. Anything, what they want, who they want to be, why they want it. Right? I don't know if it's like a fear of judgment or fear of like failure. I mean, it probably comes down to a lot of different fears and things like that. But the authenticity and almost, how do you do it? What is the masculine version of what you're talking about? Right?
I can I feel like I know, but yeah.
But I think by and large, people don't know what that example looks like.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair.
Right? Like you get like an image in your head of what that might be. And I don't know, I feel like I hate to say it has to show up right. Like there's a right way to do it. It just you just know it when you see it, when you feel it.
It's like anything but soft to me for what it's worth. Like when a man shows up in truth and clarity and in openness and emotionally connected, it is like the most masculine thing. And I've seen versions of like emotionally connected that lacks a spine and that lacks clarity, and it's really waffly. That's actually very feminine, which energetically is just constant movement and lacking structure. And that feels not great if you want like polarity in a relationship or just in the world in general. But I don't know that we have a lot of examples of that.
So let me try this. Let me think. I just thought about this when you were talking about it. If a man is bawling, if he's sobbing, immediately it's like, the fuck is that guy's deal?
Yeah.
Now, he may have just, I mean, who knows what's going on in his life, but at first it's repelling. But when a guy's getting choked up, like he's just a little choked up, you're like, oh man. Do you know what I mean? There's like, does that make sense? Like that is like a, I don't know if that makes sense, but you see the two differences there, right? One looks kind of like he's going to become like a puddle, right? And when a guy's like that, it's hard to, that's not, if a woman's like that, that's much more like, that pulls people towards. When a guy's like that, it's like, dude, pull it together. You know what I mean? But if a guy's getting choked up, you're like patting him on the back. You're kind of giving him like a bro hug or whatever. Like there's like I
heard it described. It was John Wineland. I talk about him all the time because I've been just like taking in his information. But I heard him. He was coaching a man. The man was like, you know, he's from a Latin culture. So he's like, I love to dance. I love this movement. And he said, there's nothing wrong with the masculine being in movement. It's when you're unconscious in anything that you're doing that it lacks groundedness and depth. So you can be crying. And he actually talked about, he personally had a daughter die. And it was so he's talking about how he processed grief. And he said, so I actually was coached through how to like ground my sit bones and create a framework for myself and let grief come up, but do it very consciously. And that is different than wailing without structure. And it seems interesting. So that he was talking about like, and I so identified with this. He's like, if you're just moving and you're kind of flailing around, you're kind of dancing and not thinking about it to a feminine woman, she's going to be so repelled by that. But if you're holding a structure and you're very intentional with how you're dancing and how you're moving, that's still very attractive because it's conscious. And so like when somebody's like super fidgety or they're, for a woman, it's like, for a woman in her feminine that is wanting a strong masculine man, I was like, wow, that brings so much clarity to me. It's about consciousness almost all of the time. It's about, are you aware? It's not even, well, it's kind of another way, I guess, of saying being in control.
That's what
it's like awareness.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, it would sound, so if we're going to use like the dancing analogy, so if, I don't know much about dancing.
Let's see it.
Seems like, you want to see some moves? But like in a lot of that stuff, let's say like Latin dancing, there's like someone's leading the dance between man and woman.
Yeah.
Typically the man leads. Leadership is very similar to control, right? It's organized. There's a purpose behind it, behind the movement. Like it's something that they say in the military, move with a purpose, right? So the movement of a man would be like more leadership and controlled in nature. But I don't think, so the word conscience kind of gets me a little bit because I think that men think too much or they can think their way out of doing that as opposed to like flipping back into kind of the flow state of masculinity.
Interesting, yeah.
So it would be a subconscious way of showing up, not like I'm going to go lead and here's my left foot and then my right foot and then I'm going to move her here. Like it's, it may be like that at first, but after a while that has to just flow and become the way.
Yeah.
Like the being, like how are you being? You're being in control. You're being a leader. But you're also being you're also creating a space then for other people to not have to do that, which would be the feminine energy, so there's it's not like the feminine energy in my, if I understand it correctly, this is way out on a limb now, right? So I don't know. But if it is kind of that like flowiness, that still has to be in some type of space.
That's
it can't
the
just
whole
be like
point.
over and then it's like here.
There needs to be a structure.
What's this structure? Who is being the structure? Who is being the control? Who is being the lead, right? That says like, now this is a place where you can go ahead and do all that.
Yeah,
right?
In a relationship that if two people want a more polarized relationship, then it would be the masculine man or woman. Like if it's a gay couple, you can go that way too, where it's like somebody decides that they're holding the space.
Right.
But the reason I use consciousness is because to me it just means awareness and intention. So like then somebody is aware of and holding the space and they've got the spine, and that creates room for energy to move and magic to flow.
Right.
Which is so great.
Yeah. Look, you even get excited. Look at you. That's awesome. No, intention's such a great word. I think that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah.
In terms of like kind of the consciousness of like, what kind of environment are you creating?
Right.
I mean, you do a lot of stuff with like workshops and things like that. That's very intentional. You're not just accidentally getting people in this kind of chaotic state. It's like there's that allows them to show up a certain way.
For sure. I'm creating a framework in that. Okay. You ready for a hard left?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll see. I just got on the dating apps again.
Hey.
Yeah.
What's that like? Dicey, Jen.
I'm going on my first date this afternoon, actually.
Okay.
We'll see how it goes.
What's up with that? What's going on there? What's
I don't want to say too much because if he ever listens to this.
If he ever, he better.
Yeah, but I'm not going to tell him about it right away.
Okay.
I mean, he knows I have a podcast, but I'm not giving him the name yet because, it is kind of a weird thing to navigate. Because I'm like, I put so much of myself out there and I'm very comfortable doing that because I think it's because I'm compelled to. But also like in a dating scene, I wouldn't want somebody to go read everything about me and listen to everything about me. Like I want to unfold that how I want to.
Okay.
It's kind of
What's
weird.
That all about?
I don't know. Well, it would be weird if you went on a first date. To me, I feel like it would be a lot if I went on a first date and was like, here is my entire life story for you. It's like, that's not very healthy. You don't need to know all of that out of the gate.
True, but is your podcast your whole life story?
I mean, my first episode kind of is. Yeah, but...
but okay, let's flip the script a little bit. Okay, how many of your friends know that you're going on a date with this guy? How many...
Not a lot of people yet.
Really?
Yeah, it's new news.
Yeah, but still, okay, so what I'm ultimately getting at is I feel like women become FBI agents about people that their friends are dating, and they dig in, and you learn everything like about them. And guys are like, yeah, I'm going out with some girl. And they don't know, you know what I mean? And they're like, yeah, whatever.
Okay.
It's like, whatever. Like, oh, he might check it out, but like, I don't know.
He's not going to okay, that's fair. Yeah. You think he's not going to go.
Well, I don't know. He might be like, oh yeah, I checked out. That was good for you. That's awesome. Like, I don't know if he's going to like fine tooth comb it and be like sitting there with his buddies. Like, did you hear what she said at this minute? And this thing, like, oh my God. Red flag, green flag, yellow flag.
Don't worry too much about it. Okay. But one of the things I wanted to talk about with you, because I think it's fun now that I've spent 5 months like purposely not dating after a breakup. And so now I'm like, all right, here we go. Like getting back on the saddle again. And I think that so I'm in the gym. I'm in the gym every morning. I was actually just talking to my boss out of all people about this. He said he had listened to a podcast where there are two men saying, isn't it weird that you could be at a gym every day where you're assuming you have a lot in common? If I'm there at 5 a.m. and there are men there at 5 a.m., I'm like, they have all of the things you were talking about to start with. The discipline, they've decided X, Y, Z in their life is important. But right now there is not a gym culture of meeting people. And it feels very ironic because I think that in my mind, it's like, oh yeah, it's just a bunch of meatheads that hit on chicks at the gym,
right? Which
hasn't been my experience. But I don't want to get hit on. Like hit on to me feels like it would be like if a guy came over and was like, nice sports bra, and just like checked you out.
Okay. That's aggressive.
That would be weird.
It would be very weird.
Yeah. But if somebody came over and said, hey, I see you here every day. I haven't met you yet, but my name's so-and-so. What's your name? I wouldn't feel like hit on.
What would you feel like?
I would feel like he might be interested in me, and this is nice. He introduced himself.
Which is the same as like being hit on, isn't it? Is that not?
I guess so. Yeah.
And should there be a dating app for the gym? Is that you're going to launch that next? Is that what's?
No.
What do you even call that?
I don't know, but also at the gym when I'm there, I can't help but think about what would be the worst way to get sort of like hit on, or the most awkward way.
Well, I think the one you said was pretty.
You want
hey, nice sports bra.
Or like if I went up to somebody and said, "Okay, you know that like a seated row." If you don't know what a seated row is, just Google it real quick. But like you're straddling a bench, right? You're sitting there, so some dude's on the bench. If I walked over and said, "Hey, do you mind if I work in with you?" And he's like, "Yeah, no problem." Working in means like rotating sets. Except I didn't wait for him to get up, and I sat down behind him.
You thought this through before?
I would never do this.
But you even have that.
I will in the morning be laughing to myself, thinking about hilarious gym scenarios that you could.
Okay, that could be like a whole series of things. That'd be really funny, actually, and really weird if that actually happened. But yeah.
Okay. The point is that I think men. Oh yeah, this is what I was going to say. That men are like afraid to ask out women because women have been so highly independent and are just like, don't fucking hit on me at the gym, or don't open the door for me, or whatever. There's been these like hyper independent. And I would call myself a feminist. To me, that means that I am for equal opportunity. But I also am like, I'm so tired of wearing the pants, like in the relationship or like in all of life, that if a man were to ask me out or like quote unquote hit on me at the gym, I would be like, thank God.
Yeah.
But I think, so what do I want to ask you? What's your perception of men's view on that? How do they feel right now?
On hitting on girls?
Yeah, and maybe we should like define it not as hitting on, like pursuing. Let's say pursuing women.
Well, what's the incentive right now for guys to do it?
What do you mean?
Like, so there's dating apps. I mean, you can match with 1,000 people. I mean, like, what's the incentive to walk up to somebody?
Yep.
And do that, like, and risk rejection. Being called a creep. What if it's on film? Everyone's got a camera out. What if that's in the back of someone's video? Like, dude, there's so many things going through a guy's head that he will think himself out of even doing that. Because why would he?
Yeah. So my second plan idea was that I came up with another woman at the gym. Just like make T-shirts that has a QR code.
What is the QR code for?
It's like
your phone number or something?
No. It'd have to be like a safe way to be like
safe.
Like if you are a gym crush situation, like here's a QR code.
Really?
You just know how weird I am.
It's a little passive though, isn't it? Still, like you're talking about.
I'm introducing myself to people at this point,
well,
like in a non-creepy way. I'm not like those are.
It's kind of hiding some creepiness, isn't it? Like you're hiding behind the QR code. So are you saying like why are guys not approaching girls in general, or you mean like?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Again, why would they?
What if she says yes?
Well, what if not? And odds are no. I mean, you're gonna have to deal with a lot more. Yeah, I mean, because then what? Like, if the guy can just sit there, if he sees a girl at the coffee shop and he could just be like, well, I could go talk to her, or I could just open up 10 different dating apps and set up a date right now with someone else.
Yeah, but those dating apps kind of suck, and they're really hard to get to a date.
Really?
For me, I'm like, there's like 150 some people in my thing, 10 that I've matched with, and 1 that I'm like, yeah, we'll get to a date.
Because of the conversation, or because of like the profile?
Kind of. All of the above.
So I think there's no, I think we're getting somewhere. I think it's the ability to converse, right? I think but I also think it comes back to what we talked about earlier with guys being authentic and being truthful and whatever, is the same thing in the conversation, right? But they're not. I think that in general, guys just don't get it. They don't get what? They don't get that they can just have a regular conversation. They don't have to say things a certain way or be a certain way.
Yeah.
Like it's just like, dude, you got to. unless you really mean the creepiest thing you just said on that dating app, that's really you, like you're out, right? But if you're just saying things, you're like, you can just say like, hey, how's it going? You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be, I don't know. I remember being on dating apps and just saying, hey, how's it going? And then good, da-da-da, da-da-da. Like, and then, okay, cool. What are you doing Friday night? Like, the point of this is to get to the date. It's not to go back and forth with this thing. Do you know what I mean? Same thing in a conversation. Like if you're ultimately, and I don't know, I've been out of the game for a long time, but I'm guessing like if you just start a conversation, like you just said, I heard a guy yesterday. Was it yesterday? Well, it was definitely this week. He walked up to this girl at Lifetime and just started a conversation to the point where it didn't seem like I obviously know he's trying to like get her number or whatever, but the way he did it was so normal.
What did he do?
Just walked up to her and started talking to her. Hey, I've seen you here a couple times. My name's so-and-so. Your name is? And they're like, oh, great. What are you working on today?
Let's break it down. I feel like, okay, men, if you're listening right now and you're single and you go to the gym or the coffee shop or anywhere you see normal people, I will spoon feed it to you right now. And then you can interject your opinion. So, hey, I've seen you here before. What's your name? My name's so-and-so. Like, that's the way you break the ice. It doesn't have to be creepy or weird. And then the easiest question is, if the weekend just happened, hey, like, how was your weekend? Or if the weekend's coming up, hey, you got any plans? That could sound like you're asking out on a date, but who cares? Whatever. What are you doing this weekend? Got any plans after today? Okay, awesome. Like, that's it. And then you have a normal conversation. That's it. You just need a way to break the ice. It is a little tricky with headphones on at the gym, though. So you just got to not wear the headphones.
Well, ironically, one of the things as a trainer who works at a gym like a big global gym type of thing, is part of it is talking to the members. And when you talk to members, all you do is like, hey, how's it going? I've seen you doing this a couple of times, or I've seen you here a couple of times. What are you working on today? Right? Like it's the same. It's basically the same conversation. You know, I'm not like hitting on the dude or the girl that I'm talking. It's just getting to know people. Yeah. Right? Like just, and then so they know who you are. But it's a different context. Obviously, the frame is different. It's like, I'm a resource for you. I want you to know that I exist. So when you're working out, if you have a question, you can come talk to me.
Maybe that's the problem in general. And when you just said, oh, we're getting somewhere, is that we have lost a little bit of the art of like how to like get to know people because of being online and like in all of the facets where it's like, how do I just get to know somebody anywhere? Because I'm just in such a hurry and I don't know what to ask. And I would rather just get in and get out and do my thing and not have a conversation with somebody.
Well, I think to that point, I think it's also like too results oriented. How do I get this person to give me what I want? How do I get this girl to give me her number? What do I need to do to like, to the point where like, I'm not even going to do it because I've thought myself out of it, as opposed to like, what if I just go find out like what that person, because they would be surprised how often they'll talk to a girl and they'll be like, whoa, I do not, like, no. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
God, I talked to them, and now I know that no matter how attracted I was, I'm no longer, because now when she used her words, I was out. You know what I mean? But they'll never know that because they don't even have, because they're going in with this different intention versus like, let me just see what's up with this girl.
Yeah.
Just talk to her and see what she's about.
Yeah.
Like, what if here's a frame for guys? What if you don't like her?
Right.
As opposed to like, you got to be the guy who can like get the number or talk to the girl or whatever and get this outcome and whatever. It's like, why don't you go qualify her? Instead of you feeling like you got to qualify yourself for her. You know what I mean? Like
worthiness at the end of the day. I mean, if both people approach it with like an understanding of their worth and then a curiosity, then nobody's posturing to like, you know, or coming from a place of neediness or domination or weird stuff.
Well, but it's like, okay, so a girl immediately is probably going to think, for the most part, I'm generalizing here, is like, this guy wants to have sex with me. That's why he's talking to me. At the end of the day, that's the result he wants. And he's walking up going, I want to have sex with that girl. How do I get to that point? Right? So they both understand enough about what like this end game intention is, this kind of like primal way of being, as opposed to like we're talking about of like literally qualifying, like how do she has to also be qualified to be with me. It's not just me qualifying myself for her, right? Which takes a certain level of like detachment, but being attached to an outcome in anything. So now we're talking about talking to, you know, guy talking to a girl, but it could be anything. And being attached to the outcome is a huge problem. Yeah, you want the result, but like, you're not even close to that yet. And if you if you connect everything, like your sense of worth, respect, who you are, your confidence to getting that result, you're going to miss the middle part. You're never even going to have a shot at that. Right? Because you're not taking the first step, which is like, just have the conversation and then go thinking enough about yourself to go, whoa, 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 whoa. You know what I mean? Yeah, I would like to get to that point, but then I don't have to. Right. I don't care if I do.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think the same. I mean, I would give the same advice to women. I think there's so much that's like, well, am I good enough? Am I going to be too much? Am I young enough? Am I whatever? All of the things instead of just, but it really does. I mean, it comes back to full circle in our conversation to starting with, do you know who you are? Like, do you really know who you are? And are you doing the work to clear the shit and so that you have a strong sense of self-worth and love and compassion? Like, how's your relationship with yourself? And if it's shit, if you feel like shit towards yourself, you're going to just attract not quality stuff.
Right.
And show up to a situation feeling like, God, I hope he likes me, instead of understanding he also has to be qualified. Yeah, that's real. That's good. Okay. So you've inferred that a lot of the stuff, quote unquote, that you put out there on social media is, well, you've said very directly, it's for men. You are a man. And it tends to be, if I can label it, tough love-ish.
A little bit,
yeah. And as demonstrated by our conversation today, and I think previous conversations we've had, there is a lot of love beneath the tough for people. Yeah. Talk to me about that. Like, what do you want to see for people? Like, if somebody's listening today and they're thinking like, oh, I need a trainer, and I'm looking at Joe's Instagram, and he's like tough loving me, and I'm like fucking scared.
Well, if you're scared, you should definitely do it. Right? Because I think that's hitting on something that's like, I think the line between like being afraid and being excited is very thin line, right? So I think it can be speaking to that, you know. Or if somebody's like, man, fuck this guy, what a dick. It's like, yeah, well, I know that feeling. I've been that guy. So you can't tell me nothing, only to find out I should have listened. Do you know what I mean? Like, when I say it's tough love, it's because it's direct, it's honest, it's true, but it's real, you know. And if as much as people are attracted to it, I think the people who aren't, sometimes that's hitting something, right? That's feedback for them. Why is what I'm saying bothering you? If it's coming from the heart from me, why is it stinging you? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to barbecue you because I think you're a terrible human being and I'm like this malicious, it's not evil. I'm not coming from a place of hate. Right. But if it was hate and you hated it, I would get that. We'd have a problem, right? But and then, again, that's from stuff that I've learned. When I think back to when coaches would say things and I'd be super sensitive, and I was like the most sensitive kid ever. Like I wish I wasn't, right? Because it blocked a lot of things where I was good at like empathizing with people. I was not good at like receiving messages of like true, sincere guidance from coaches, from my dad, these different points where I'm like, oh my God, if I would have just like swallowed the pride, taken a step back and just listened to what they were saying, they did have my best interest in mind. I could have trusted them, but instead I thought they were being mean to me. When really what they were trying to do is like, dude, wake up to this potential, wake up to this opportunity, wake up to what we see in you. Just because they didn't know how to communicate it the way I needed to hear it doesn't mean that what they were saying was coming from a bad place. It was actually coming from a very loving place. I look back and I'm like, oh, like that's regrets for me. I look at that, I'm like, dang, why did I not listen to that coach? Why was I tuning my dad out? He was right about so many more things. You know what I'm saying? So my advice would be like, take a step back, dude. Take a step back. You can come back to your ego. You can come back to pride at any moment. But for right now, just take a second and listen to what I'm saying to you. I know that there's more in you than you're letting out, and I can help you start that transformation for you. I can help you with the physical stuff that's going to unlock the mental stuff that is going to let you be your person that you admire, the man that you admire, your purpose-driven self that can just explode levels in your life. I know there are guys out there who maybe financially or whatever, they look like they're flying high. They could be millionaires, multimillionaires, but I bet they could be even more than that. right? And I'm not, just because I'm not that doesn't mean that I can't help somebody get to their fullest expression of who they are as a man. And that's what that's about, right? It's not about the fat that they're carrying around. That's what I say to, hey, dude, you're 30 pounds fatter than you should be to be healthy for your kids, for your wife, for your job. How much better could your performance be if you really stepped into your full potential, your full possibility, your full purpose? Is it tough love? Yeah, I guess. But I don't know how else to do it. I'm not going to go the indirect route because I'm never going to get there. I need to go straight to the heart. And if that sounds abrasive or whatever, like, so be it. I have to be honest with you. And the only way I'll do that is being a loving asshole, is to give you this feedback. The way that is most authentic for me to do that. Do you know what I mean?
That's really great.
That's really real. I mean, that's
what I want. I want, anytime I'm talking with anybody here, part of what I hope that I can do is ask questions that help show your heart. So people see that. And I think they'll hear that from me today.
I hope so.
Your heart is for them.
Yeah.
And I appreciate how you're talking about, like, when people were looking at you saying, like, wake up. Like, that is from a place of you being compelled to help people wake up. So why? So they can be the fullest version of the man that they're called to be, which is fucking awesome.
I think so.
Good work, Joe.
Hey, thanks, Jen. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
If people want to get a hold of you, where do they find you?
I'll just say Instagram. My name, Joe Whisney. That's the best spot.
Okay.
That's probably where I spend the most time.
Be in the show notes.
Socially. And then, yeah.
Okay.
That'll be it.
Adios, amigo.
Thanks, Jen. Appreciate you.